I pulled up to the small, dark house. The moon hung full in the sky, illuminating the surrounding woods. Doing deliveries at night really spooks me, but I had to run some errands during the day and was making up for lost time. I walked up the cracked walkway carrying the order. The smell of taco spice wafted into my nostrils. I wasn't sure if this was the right house, but as I walked closer, I could make out the house number faintly painted on the wall, 6606. I was initially uncertain because the porch light was turned off. I really hated when people ordered only for you to pull up to an unlit house. The darkness made me instinctively raise my guard. The only other time I had felt this way had been with those weird dog orders a few weeks ago. I dropped off the food and began walking back to my car. The night air blew coolly on my skin. A feeling of relief washed over me now that I had finished the last order of the week. That was when I heard a noise. A deep, guttural howl came bellowing from the forest beyond. At the edge of my vision, I thought I saw a swift shadow lunge from between the trees. I took off in a full sprint to my car. I was panting heavily as I slammed the car door shut with a loud thud. I really needed to work out more. I peeked over the steering wheel to see what had been chasing me. There was nothing, only the dark house and the swaying trees. Had I really just imagined it? This wasn't the first time that I had imagined a wolf stalking me. Ever since those dog orders, with those dirty trailers and that wild man best friend, I had a heightened sense of paranoia. I kept feeling like I was being stalked by something in the woods. I had tried to forget about everything and move on, but deep down my mind wouldn't let me forget. There were so many unanswered questions. After the incident, orders became few and far between in my small town, so I began commuting half an hour to a larger town nearby. Business wasn't great there, but much more reliable. They even had a fancy cafe. It was at this cafe where I ran into Ben, the sheriff's son I had went to high school with. He was a quiet guy and didn't have many friends. Maybe having an overbearing big-shot dad had something to do with that, but he seemed even gloomier than usual. I had come in to pick up an order for 5 croissants and a single latte when I spotted him. "Hey Ben," I called from across the room. "How have you been?" He didn't look up. The cafe wasn't very big, and there was no one else in there besides us and the baristas. Was he pretending not to hear me? I can't stand it when people ignore me. I walked over to him, and when I got close enough, I smacked him on the shoulder with a hard slap. "Hey dude, I thought you joined the force like your old man." Finally, he looked up from his phone and made eye contact with me. "Oh, hi Mark. I didn't see you there." I raised my eyebrow at him. So what? Did you seriously not hear me just now, or... "Oh, the police academy. No, I didn't pass the entrance exams." "Really? I hear they're desperate to take anyone these days. That's kind of impressive." He made a face, like a cross between a scowl and a frown. "Well, I guess my heart just wasn't in it." "I see. I bet your dad was pissed. So, what brings you out here? Do you live here now?" "Not exactly." He looked down again, at his shoes this time. What is that supposed to mean? Ben had been nervously tapping his foot, when suddenly he stopped and puffed out his chest at me. "Look, I'm a delivery driver now, okay? Yeah, the guy with his whole career path decided for himself, failed, and has to do gig work to get by. Pretty funny, huh?" I tried to give him my most sincere smile. "No, man, it's not a big deal. I do it too." "Oh crap, that reminds me. I almost forgot to pick up my order." I flashed my phone at the barista behind the counter, and they handed the oversized bag and the hot cup to me right away. "Alright, well, I guess I'll see you around," I say to him as I pass by. "Yeah, see ya, Mark." "Oh, and Ben?" "What?" "For not making the force, you have a pretty good cop impression." He smirked as I went on my way. We would run into each other periodically over the next few weeks. There wasn't much time to exchange anything other than, "Hey, how's it going? Making any money? That's good. See you around." That was until that fateful day, the day that I would set Ben down a path that he would never recover from. We bumped into each other at a deli this time, kind of like the one I was still renting from. Dark clouds hung in the sky. A storm was predicted to roll through any time. I noticed Ben waiting for an order, and we exchanged pleasantries. I go to show my phone to the sandwichier, and the app wouldn't load. Frustrated, I call over to Ben. "Hey man, is the app working for you?" Ben looks down at his phone. He frowns. It isn't working for me either." Suddenly, the power flickers on and off. We hear a yell from behind the counter. "Phew, almost cut my finger off." Ben and I turn to each other and chuckle. "Looks like the cell tower is down," Ben says. "What a bummer. So, what do we do now? You hungry? I know a good spot we can wait out the storm." We got a couple of sandwiches from the guy who had nearly amputated his finger, and went to sit down. Ben took me to an interesting place. It was in an enclosed patio area. It seemed to me like a commercial shop should have been built there, but was never finished. What was left was just this weird, dark tunnel between two businesses. a large gaping void in an otherwise complete strip center. Some patio furniture and vending machines were scattered around in an attempt to make the space seem more lively. Huh, I never knew about this place, I admitted. Yeah, well, I didn't for a while either. You tend to pick up all the spots after driving in circles around the same few blocks over and over. I like to call this place purgatory. We picked the table that wasn't already covered in trash to eat our meal. The rain continued pouring down, forming large puddles in low spots of the asphalt parking lot. We checked our phones again. Any bars? I asked. Nope. Well, screw it. I guess I'm going to call it a day. You know the cell service isn't going to be up anytime soon. Yeah, it's whatever, but, it'll be nice to actually have time to enjoy lunch for once. Ben had bought lunch for the two of us. I feel so guilty thinking back on it now. We ate there and made small talk. Soon, it became obvious that we didn't really have any common interests, so naturally the conversation steered back around to the reason we were there in the first place, our work. After an awkward pause, I asked, "So, what's the best order that you've ever gotten?" Well, how so? By time? Sure. Well, one time I got paid $10 to go deliver an order right across the street. That's pretty good. I get those from time to time, but come on, give me something good, something crazy. Ben pondered for a moment. Well, one time I was working later than usual, around 11 p.m., when I get an order to hand it to the customer. Usually, that kind of creeps me out, being out after dark and all. Like I don't know if they're going to try to murder me or something. Oh, I know the feeling, I replied. I considered telling Ben about the dogs, but I was still on the fence. And also, Ben continued, it's a real pain in the ass trying to see the house number, especially if there are no streetlights, and this was hitting too close to home. Just get on with it, I blurted out. Right, so I pull up to this house around 11:30 at night and ring the bell. I wait 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 20, and when I'm just about to bolt out of there, the door opens. I couldn't believe it. It was a woman with pink lipstick, red hair sopping wet, and nothing on but a bathrobe. She was gorgeous. At first, she smiled at me. Then she apologized for making me wait and said it was a real shame that she had no one to share the meal with. I was on the edge of my seat at this point. Well, what did you do? I sort of tensed up. I couldn't do anything. Not after. Ben trailed off. But soon, he continued. I just gave her the food without saying anything, turned around and left. What was I supposed to do? Go in, you fool. But that's against company policy. We're not even employees, we're private contractors. Oh, come on. Would you seriously go into the house of a woman you just met late at night? Wouldn't be the first time, I said with a wink. Fine, Mr. Smooth. What's the craziest order you've ever gotten? I hesitated at first, but I decided that there was no harm in telling Ben. Well, nothing as stimulating as that, but I've been lucky to get some expensive single orders. $20, $30. But man, this one time, I got a total of $100 just to deliver some... I stopped mid-sentence. What? Ah, crap, I forgot. I wasn't supposed to tell you. Ben had a weird look on his face. What do you mean? Well, you know how the customer can type in their own instructions? Sure. Well, this customer had one of the weirdest ones. It said, "Tell no one about this order." That's creepy, Ben replied without even thinking. Then he froze. A huge bite of meatball marinara was about to fall out of Ben's mouth, but soon he recomposed himself, swallowing a mouthful. Then he said something I hadn't expected. French fries. Huh? Yeah, it was an order of French fries. How did you... Ben put up his hand. He had a different demeanor to him now, like he had just been awoken from a deep sleep. So, I used to know a guy. Well, a girl, actually. She was a close friend of mine. Her name was Ashley. She told me about an order just like that once. She said she had to drive all the way out to this creepy old trailer and leave the food all the way around at the back gate. Yeah, you're right so far, but you're leaving out the best part. I was trying to make a joke, but Ben wasn't smiling. Right, he said. It was a delivery for the dog. That's the one. So, did she make a lot of money too? I guess she did. Not that it matters much. What do you mean? Now Ben had a grave expression on his face. I haven't heard from her in 6 months. It's like she fell off the face of the earth. I was stunned. She hadn't really just disappeared, had she? That wild man's face flashed in my mind. I got an uneasy feeling, but surely there was a reasonable explanation. Well, maybe she just moved or found a real job. Ben almost had tears in his eyes now. When I said close friends, I meant that we were... Ben paused. You were dating, right? Isn't that a conflict of interest? I should report you to HR. Ben wiped his eyes and let out a cough. I think she would have told me if she had gotten a new job, or moved away. Unless she ghosted you. I was still foolishly attempting to lighten the mood, but I could tell that it stung Ben a little bit. "Come on, man," I said. "I was only joking." "No, you're right. I consider that as a possibility too. That would honestly be better than the alternative." I didn't want to consider the alternative. Perhaps I was coping in my own way. I was still in denial about how those experiences had affected me. "So, what did she look like? Maybe I've seen her around working, like how I've been bumping into you." Ben let out a sigh. "Well, she is blonde. Very light blonde hair, almost white, with a beautiful smile. And her eyes are so green. I could get lost in her eyes." "Wow, I see. She sounds like a real looker. No wonder you didn't go for that ginger chick. I respect you for being so..." Before I could finish, Ben slammed his fist down on the table. "This isn't a joke, you douchebag." A raging fire burned in his eyes. Suddenly, Ben reached across the table and grabbed me by my collar. Our sandwich lunch littered the ground. "You always thought you were so clever. Someone should have taught you a lesson a long time ago." I never realized how strong Ben was until now. At that moment, I really thought he was going to kill me. I was just glad that he wasn't armed. Ben, relax, man. I'm sorry. You're right. My mouth does get me into trouble sometimes. Truth is, I'm really messed up after those orders. I can't imagine what Ashley must have gone through." To my relief, Ben seemed to calm down and loosen his grip. I would have to buy a new shirt. I'd finally managed to talk myself out of a bad situation rather than into one. "Listen, I want to help you, Ben. I've been trying to run away from what happened, but maybe this is a sign. We should work together to find out what's going on. We need to find out what happened to Ashley." The moody, quiet Ben of before had transformed. Now he had a look of determination in his eye. "Mark, whoever took Ashley, I'm going to kill him. I'll do whatever it takes to save her." Before long, the two of us were in my car and driving towards Fido's trailer. As much as I appreciated having an ally, I wasn't sure how much I could really trust Ben. I suppose it entirely depended on how well he could keep his emotions in check. I tried to talk Ben out of going so suddenly, but he wouldn't listen. I couldn't exactly deny the guy, but I don't think he had much of a plan. What he did have was a gun. He had gotten his pistol out of his car before we left. Everything was happening so fast. I felt like Ben's fury could ignite a forest fire. As much as I wanted to find Ashley, I can't deny that I was somewhat relieved when we pulled up to the address. The trailer and the fence were gone. All that remained was a pile of debris covered in ash. "I thought you said this was the place," Ben shouted. His voice echoed off the surrounding forest. "Shh, keep your voice down." My eyes darted between the trees. "It was," I continued. "They must have just moved everything. Maybe they rotate around to different lots. That must be why they use trailers." Ben tightly clutched his gun. I was worried that he might do something rash, but then he holstered it. "Well, maybe we can find a clue in this pile," he said. As we dug through, most of what we found I had expected. Old car parts, broken fence boards, rusty tools, and fast food waste. It seemed like there was no shortage of receipts with the name Best Friend on them. But there was one type of item in particular that caught my eye. Littered throughout the pile were these strange glass vials. They looked ancient, like vials you might see in a black and white horror movie. Was Best Friend creating his own monster? After about an hour of digging, we seemed to have gone through all the items in the pile. "On to the next site," Ben said. Ben had been silent for most of the ride, but about halfway to the Bella trailer, Ben finally spoke up. It looked like he had a lot weighing on his mind. "I still can't believe, how could you just deliver to that psycho? Wasn't it obvious that something fishy was going on?" I began to sweat. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. "I don't know. I mean, money is money, right?" I said. "How was I supposed to know?" Ben looked like he was about to say something, but thought better of it. "Yeah, I guess so. How could you have known?" The sunset was minutes away when I pulled up to the next address. It was the same story. No trailer, no fence, and a burnt mound. I turned to Ben and said, "Hey, let's make it quick. I really don't want to be out here after dark." Ben didn't respond. He knelt down to the pile and began digging frantically like a rabid dog. "Hey man, relax. You're going to hurt yourself." Ben continued digging. Then he stopped. Gently, he pulled something out of the debris. I couldn't tell what it was at first, but it seemed delicate. Ben kept it completely concealed within his hand. What did you find?" Ben slowly walked over to me and opened his hand. Upon his palm was a bracelet. The violet string had been torn and frayed, but there were still some beads left on it. They spelled Ash. Stars now decorated the sky as I pulled back into town. As much as the prospect horrified me, I promised Ben that we could go check the address where I had met the wild man the following day. Ben shook his head. "No. If you aren't going tonight, then I will." "Ben, you can't be serious. It could be dangerous." He gave me a stern look. Ashley is still out there. Now I'm certain of it. I have to be brave. For her. I put a pin on the map as close to the third location as I could remember. I had only been there once after all. As Ben got into his car, he told me one final thing. If anything happens to me, don't bother going to the police or my dad. They won't believe you anyway. Then Ben drove off in his car without saying another word. What did he mean? Had Ben already tried to tell the sheriff about Ashley? I couldn't sleep that night. I couldn't do much of anything except wait for a response from Ben. I must have texted him 10 different versions of, "Are you there yet?" It was nearly 2 a.m. when Ben finally replied. This place is just like the others. I found one thing. Looks like a business card. It says Wolf's 8. The rest is burnt away. With no other places to search, we had hit a brick wall. All I was left to do was wait for a new order from Best Friend. As simple as it was, that was much easier said than done. For one thing, I couldn't seem to get another order from them, even if I tried. It was up to Ben. The plan was for him to wait until he got the order, then I would simply follow him in my car. We sat around the whole weekend, declining every offer. However, the order we wanted never came. I could tell Ben was getting frustrated. This is taking too long. Do you think they're onto us? I shrugged. Fine. I'll wait until I do get it, no matter how long it takes. I don't care about the money anymore. That's when I realized how similar we were, how we could have been such close friends. I told Ben that I didn't have the luxury to wait all week, as I still had bills to pay. As expected, he didn't listen. This was Ben's crusade, and there was no one in the world who could have stopped him. A few days later, I got a text from Ben. It read, "I got it." I nearly spilled my drink when I saw it. I quickly responded, "Wow, no way. I'm pretty far away now, but I can cancel my order and head right over." After a few minutes, Ben replies, "No, I can do this alone." Well, what's the address? He didn't reply after a few minutes, so I just said, "All right, well, go for it. Keep me posted. Good luck." I could never wrap my head around why he insisted on going alone, but there was no reason to expect him to act any differently. Was he just going to go in guns blazing? Again, I just sat helplessly by my phone. I expected him to reply eventually, but no, there was nothing. Ben would never text me again. A day goes by, no reply. 2 days pass. I text him again, nothing. At this point, it was pretty obvious that something had happened to Ben. I did the only thing I could do, and it was the one thing Ben told me not to. I went to the police. I got butterflies in my stomach as I walked up the steps to the police station. I hadn't been there since that DUI scare. I walked up to the front desk. There was a female officer clicking away at some keys on her computer. "Hello, sir. How can I help you?" "Hi, I need to report a missing person." "Okay, when were they last seen?" 2 days ago. 2.5. "What is their name?" I paused. This choice could unravel my whole life. Even my precarious income could be in jeopardy. I took a breath and said, "Ben Smith." "Ben Smith?" the officer repeats in a quizzical tone. "Yes." "Are you positive, sir?" "Yes," I repeat more emphatically. I know what you're probably thinking. Yes, I am referring to the sheriff's son. Oddly, the officer's face doesn't change. It's almost as if she was prepared for this exact moment. "Listen, sir, if this is some sort of prank, look, I know the sheriff personally. If you just let me see him, I'm sure he would. The sheriff is currently busy with other matters. You'll have to come back another day. In the meantime, you're welcome to file a report." I was livid at this point. I began yelling at the officer to let me see the sheriff. It must have worked, because after a few minutes of yelling, Ben's dad comes walking out. "Hey, Mark, what's all the commotion, son?" "Oh, Sheriff, thank God. I'm so sorry. It's about Ben. It's all my fault." The tears began flowing uncontrollably at this point. I even surprised myself with how emotional I was. "Hey now, take it easy. Let's just go into my office and talk it over. Jesse, hold my calls, please." As I sat in the sheriff's office, I got an uneasy feeling. "Now, Mark, just tell me what happened. Tell me everything. We have all the time in the world." Rather than put me at ease, the sheriff's words made me feel like I was in an interrogation room. "Sheriff, if I could be frank, that's an odd thing to say when your son is missing." I would have thought that the sheriff would be organizing several search parties the moment he heard that his son was missing. At that moment, I no longer felt like I was talking with a family friend. I kept my story light, only telling key details when absolutely necessary. During my entire testimony, the sheriff says nothing, no questions to clarify or determine certainty. It was almost as if he had expected what I was going to tell him, like he had heard similar stories before. I then remembered what Ben had said. "They won't believe you anyway." "Now, listen, Mark," the sheriff says. I haven't been quiet for so long. His voice actually startled me. "You sound very stressed out. I think you've been working too hard. What you need to do is go home and just relax. Relax? How can I relax at a time like this? Look, my son Ben, he's an adult now. To tell you the truth, I haven't talked to him myself very much since, well, I'm sure he already told you what happened. I could see a twinge of anger flash upon the sheriff's face for a split second. Then he continued. He is his own man after all. You said it yourself about that Ashley girl. To my knowledge, no one has reported her missing either. Kids leave small towns like this all the time, off to LA or wherever. It's by no means uncommon. Maybe they even ran off together. The idea of Ashley and Ben concocting some elaborate ruse just to run off together anyway sounded preposterous, but somehow the sheriff made the idea sound so convincing, like he had rehearsed a speech like this countless times. I think it would be best if you just forgot about this whole thing. I'm sure that Ben is fine. He'll turn up eventually. The last thing we need is the town getting all worked up about rumors of people going missing around here. But what about the orders? Maybe you could contact the app company and trace down the people behind this. That whole best friend business, I think it's best you forgot about that as well. Although he made the same excuse, his tone was noticeably more firm. He gave me an intense glare. But don't you find it strange that... Drop it, Mark. The edge in his voice caught me by surprise. People around here like to be left alone. You should be more careful when you're out making your little deliveries. People could easily have you cited for trespassing. That is, if they don't take care of you themselves. The sheriff's voice then took on a calmer tone, like he was some sort of bipolar good cop, bad cop. Oh, Mark, I can't always be there to protect you like when you were a kid. With all due respect, Sheriff, Ben did not run away. Ashley did not run away. I think someone took them. You really need to investigate what happened. The sheriff pretended not to hear me, seemingly more concerned with getting his next point across. Oh, and by the way, Ben, those animals that you saw were dogs. Just plain, ordinary dogs. Nothing more. Got it? My stomach dropped. I intentionally hadn't mentioned anything about the dogs in my abbreviated story. The sheriff seemed to notice his mistake as well, but put on a good poker face. I just nodded my head. I had already seen some of what Ben could do when he was angry. I didn't want to test his father, a man with much more authority who had me alone with him in a room. Not much else was said, and I walked out of that police station feeling worse than I did when I walked in. Now, 2 people were missing. Best friend might be stalking me, and the police could be covering it all up. If I was ever going to get to the bottom of this, I would have to do things my way. Thank you for listening. For more content like this, please be sure to subscribe, and remember, nothing's lost forever.